Well, the arrest of a man in the heart of Westminster, the heart of the Palace of Westminster, was always likely to cause an enormous controversy, an enormous row, and it duly has. His name is Chris Cash. He's been named by the Times, and he was a researcher at Westminster. Now, not only that, he knew and had access to ministers like Tom Tugendhat, who's now the Security Minister. He knew and had access to Alicia Cairns, who's the chair of the Foreign Affairs Committee at Westminster and one who's deeply interested and engaged in the argument and the debate about China. He had access to a number of MPs, including those who were seen by China as hostile, who have been sanctioned by China, and was working in this research capacity, mixing and mingling among all of them, sometimes convening lunches and dinners, gathering news and information on what they all had to say. Now, should be said, this man, Chris Cash, denies all of the suggestions levelled against him. That needs to be said, but the questions just roll and roll and roll. Some of these MPs, they want to know, what did he pass on? They want to know, what did he know about them and about what they were doing? And beyond that, there's the question of, are there more people who are also possibly in the file marked potential spies for China? People with the House of Commons pass, working for MPs, with access to ministers. Now, all of that is rolling and bubbling today. There's going to be a statement in the House of Commons. We'll have that, of course, on Times Radio. And I'm going to be discussing this, as you'd expect, and all the latest on my Drive Time programme. Now, beyond that, there's a bigger strategic argument, and it's a very live one. On the one hand, you have, let's call them the hawks. Now, these include Suella Braverman. It includes Tom Tugendhat, who knew this man, Chris Cash, and who is now the Security Minister. And they want to designate China a threat, formally designate it a threat to the interests of this country. Now, that would mean many things, but among the things that it would mean anyone taking directions, and I'm quoting now from China, would need to register themselves and register their activities with the authorities. It would mean other things too, by way of tightening and guarding against any threat to Britain's national interests from China if it's designated a threat. There's another side to that, and it's quite lively. On the other side, you have, among others, the Foreign Office in government. You have the Treasury in government, and they're worried if you designate China a threat, well, then you start to undermine and chill trade relations with China, because China, of course, is a total state. It has a say and it has control over pretty much everything that happens in China in the economic and political sphere. So in doing business with China, do you then put a damper on that? Because why is that important? Well, for the obvious reason that China is a huge global player. In a sense, to use the old cliche, you can't live with China, you can't live without it. China is hugely aggressive in defense of its interests, but it is also a massive economic force, also a massive technological force. So how do you regulate that? How do you get investment into this country from China of the kind that you want without undermining Britain's interests on all sorts of fronts at the same time? Really, really difficult question. Now, on the show, I'm going to be talking to Chris Patten. Now, Chris Patten was a former governor of Hong Kong, and so knows a great deal about it. He's also, by the way, a former senior cabinet minister in the Conservative Party, and he's now the Chancellor of Oxford University. His views are worth listening to. His opinions are worth listening to. You can hear all of them when I speak to Chris Patten a little bit later on. Roger Boys, Times diplomatic editor, will give us the latest as well as his analysis. So lots coming up and more that I haven't had time to mention here on Drive from 5 o'clock on Times Radio.